What we're going to do now is create um, a particular layer that corresponds with our layers that we're using in Mudbox or any other uh, 3D painting software. This particular material is like concrete, and what I know from this concrete is that there's not a whole lot of specularity to it. Doesn't mean that there isn't any specularity, but I'm going to create a specularity map from this particular image. So under my layers, I need to double click on the background layer and unlock it. And I'll rename this to BG. Actually, I'll just call it wall spec. Call it wall spec, and then press OK. Okay, now when we create a specular layer, every area that is black is going to be not shiny, and every area that's white is going to be shiny. There aren't any black and white values on this particular image other than in the grooves and maybe this section here. Everyone's image is going to look different. But what we need to do is we need to get rid of all of the color value. So we have to desaturate our image. And what we need to do is click on Image, Adjustments, Desaturate. Image, Adjustments, Desaturate. And what that's going to do is get rid of all of the color values. Alright. So next thing that we have to do is increase the levels of our image. So there are three levels. There's white, black, and then there's gray. Grays are what we call our midtones. The gray values will not reflect as much as the white values. So we're going to click on Image, Adjustments, and let's click on our levels. Image, Adjustments, Levels. Okay, so you've got this thing that looks like a mountain, alright? And underneath that mountain there are three like triangles. So if I move the triangle on the left, which is a black, all the way to the right, you can see the image changing. This is what they call crushing the blacks, right? Crushing the black, right? So that's what we're doing right now. If I drag it all the way to the right, then obviously my entire image becomes black. So I want to find really dark values, right? I want it to be very dark. And then I also want the white values to be really white. So I'm going to click on the midtones. And you can see as I move my midtone values, which is that second triangle underneath our histogram, right? If I bring that value to the left, you could see that it's making the white part of the image much whiter. But if I drag it too far to the left, then I'm actually losing a lot of the image resolution. Alright, so I'm looking for a value that I still can keep some of the detail in there. And now if I click on the third value, right, the third triangle, which is the white value, and drag that to the left, now you can really see the white values pop. Alright? Okay. So if I didn't want those white values to be so white, then I can click on the middle triangle, which is our midtones, and drag that to the right. And now, this is what I get. So you're trying to get rid of some of the gray values and really have a nice image that looks like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint this map directly on top of our diffuse map. So now I'm happy with this. I'll press OK. and I'll go to File, Save Scene As. I'll find my folder, my source images, and we're going to rename this. I'll call this Wall Spec 01. Call this Wall Spec 01, and I'm going to make sure that this is a. Let's go to a JPEG image, and we'll click Save. Quality, I'll keep it at maximum. Press OK. Now, for some of us, we've already painted a diffuse texture map in Mudbox. So I'm going to open up the diffuse texture map I already painted in Mudbox. Okay? So in Mudbox, prior to creating a specular map, this is what I created. Alright? Now, what I can do is take this particular map and repeat the same process, and I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate, and I'll repeat the same exact steps that I did earlier. So let's go ahead and crush the blacks. I'll bring the whites over, and then I'm kind of happy with that. I'll press OK, and I'll go to File, Save As, and I'm going to rename this one to Wall _ spec, and I'll change the format to Targa, because now I'm going to apply this particular image into Maya. So this particular texture here is when I paint my diffuse texture in Mudbox, and then I can paint my specular layer directly over top of that. This is an image of me already painting my diffuse layer in Mudbox, but forgetting to actually paint my specular layer. Alright, so I'm going to minimize this, open Mudbox, and open up the scene I was working on before. So recent files, okay, it's not there. Let's go into here. Mudbox. Okay. Alright, so let me show you exactly how this is going to work. Alright. So in Mudbox, I think my layer is locked. Okay. So I'm going to paint this particular layer in Mudbox. Alright, let me delete. Let's just create a new layer. Alright, so this is my layer. This is my texture file. I think this is it. And I'm going to scale it up a little bit larger so I can see what I'm doing. So it's really important that I try to keep my camera still. Alright, because I want to paint this texture. So that prevent me from moving my camera around, I'm going to go to my object list, and I'm going to click on this empty space to the left of my perspective camera, which will actually give me this little lock. So I can no longer like zoom in, zoom out in this particular view. It keeps my textures to be perfectly aligned. Alright, so here's my diffuse layer I'm painting on here, and now I can upload another stencil. So I'll go down here, click on this icon here, add stencil, and I'm going to look for my stencil that I just created in Photoshop. And I think we named it to Wall Spec 01. Open. And here's my wall spec. Alright, perfect. So now both of these images actually align. They're perfectly matched. Now, I don't want to create another diffuse layer. I don't want to paint directly on top of my diffuse layer because we're creating a specular layer. So I have to click on this icon here, and we're going to rename this wall spec, and we'll change the channel to specular and press OK. Now when I click, you're going to see this very shiny map. Alright? And you're going to notice that it's not just painting that map anywhere, it's painting it let me turn off my object list, or turn off the lock. So you can see as I turn my camera a different angle, this area is going to shine. You see how it's shiny? And the reason why I locked my camera is so that when I turn my diffuse layer back on, where you at? It's perfectly aligned. So when my camera passes by this object, it's really beautiful, right? Now you're like, okay, I realize that this is a concrete wall, but it's shiny like a piece of metal, right? Maybe I don't want it to shine as much. In Maya, we can change the level, but we can also change the level in Mudbox as well by clicking on the strength and dialing that down. You see? So we can change how much strength we have. The other option is to simply paint your diffuse map. All right, just paint your diffuse layer the way you want. Go into Photoshop and change your adjustments and your levels, and then we can jump back into Maya. But before I do that, I want to export my specular map. All right, I want to export my specular map back into Maya. So I will right mouse click on here, export selected, go to my folder, and I'll call this wall, actually one wall underscore spec. I'll change it to a target image, save, and then I'm going to export this diffuse layer, and I'll call this one wall underscore diffuse, save. I'll jump back into Maya, and I'm going to select both of these walls. I can't remember which wall it was. I think it was this one. And I'm going to assign a material to this. So assign new material, Arnold AI standard. I'm going to give this particular object the wall diffuse. There it is. Okay. That's our wall diffuse. And then under the specular color right here, I'm going to plug in our file. I'll look for our one wall spec. And now if I give myself a render, well, we can't really see the influence of the specular map on the wall because our weight of our specular is down. So if I turn the weight all the way to 1, then now you could see the specular here. See it? Really nice. It lines up really good. Okay. Now I'm just going to break this connection real quick, and I'll show you the other example, which was if we painted the entire wall in Mudbox with our diffuse layer, it would probably look something like this, right? We painted everything inside of Mudbox, and we've got this really, really nice diffuse layer, but we forgot to paint a specular layer in Mudbox. We forgot to paint a specular layer in Mudbox. Again, just take this particular layer into Photoshop, change the image adjustments, desaturate, and then we go to image adjustments levels. We adjust our levels. We save this diffuse map, and then we just go back into our specular layer, assign that image to it, and voila. So you can see the specular layer reflecting off of here. We probably need a light source, but you can see how that it's reflecting off of there, right? If that's too much reflectivity, we can always change the roughness down. The roughness is how shiny that object is going to be. Now if I drag it to the right, it's going to be blurred. If I drag it all the way to the left, it's going to shine like a really shiny floor, right? It's going to shine too much. So I don't think a concrete wall would shine like that. I believe that the weight would be much higher, probably something around 0.6, 0.7, and so you get a softer reflection when the light passes over that. So that was just two examples of how to apply Specular Map. I hope you guys enjoyed. And the next tutorial will be assigning lights to our environment.